Back in 2017, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints severed its ties completely with the Boy Scouts of America program that had changed its name to Scouting America, leaving the Young Men's program a little wanting. But is there light at the end of the tunnel now that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth just came out talking about some huge changes that they're assisting the scouting program with? And is that going to open the door to the church reopening that relationship? Or, in my opinion, should we just manifest Luke Nichols coming out with a new scouting program, calling it Outdoor Boys? We'll talk about that. And then we're going to explore the idea that did Isaac truly get sacrificed by his father Abraham and then raised from the dead, contrary to what we read in Genesis chapter 22? Well, Jonah Barnes makes a pretty strong argument for it. All this and more. My name is Jackson Wayne Paul, and welcome to Latter Daily Saints.
What power shall stay the heavens from pouring down knowledge from heaven upon the heads of the Latter-day Saints?
Jack, I think you've got a little disclaimer to give our audience, don't you?
Yes, so I'm filming this at the end of the episode that we just filmed. Okay, halfway through, I noticed that this patch was on my chest and it says HIV positive. And you're like, what the heck is that? Why do you even have that? In the Marine Corps, okay, in the Marine Corps, we have these different patches that we put on our body armor that say our blood type. And so like mine's O positive, so I have a patch that says O positive. A Marine made a bunch of patches that said HIV positive and was sticking them secretly on people's body armor. And then Hayden got one stuck on him this last drill weekend. And I think he slapped it on my chest. He's not here right now and I haven't been able to talk to him. But this was on my chest for a majority of the episode, and I had no idea. So that's just a little disclaimer of what the heck is that on your chest.
Just laugh. Don't take it too seriously.
Anyways, we had already filmed the majority of the episode, so we're not going to refilm it, but hopefully you don't unsubscribe. Anyways, now go into the video we just filmed. Happy Friday, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you with us here at the end of the week, okay? You did it. One more week under your belt, and hopefully you feel great about the productivity in which you exuded this week, and that spending time on this channel, you have felt that it's been productive and faith promoting. Because here at Latter Daily Saints, though none of us as of yet that have come on the show or host the show are official representatives of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we've been members for a long time and we love running our mouths on the internet about important topics. So if you find anything that we do valuable, we ask you to subscribe. It helps get the channel out to more people that are interested in this type of content. And by the analytics, it shows about 40% of our regular watchers aren't subscribed. So just go ahead and hit the button, okay? The subject for today, okay, we had to bring my older brother on because nor I or Brando, spoiler alert, are Eagle Scouts, okay?
Hey.
Welcome to the Eagles nest.
Okay.
It's true, though.
It's true. And we'll get into the individual circumstances of why Brandon got every single merit badge, but just not the stamp of Eagle Scout. Okay?
Excuses.
But anyways, if we rewind time back to what? The early 2010s, you know, Scouting of America, I mean, even before then, but I'm just saying for my own personal life. I remember Tuesday nights working on merit badges in the summer, going to Weeblo's camp, doing my Arrow of Light ceremony. My grandpa was able to, you know, what is it?
Pinewood Derby?
Pinewood Derby. Okay.
Yeah.
What a legend.
Dude, I remember the guys that would always run those were super like anal about not walking over the track. And one time,
Never walk over the track.
yeah, one time a guy in our ward walked over the track and he made him pay $100 right there.
What?
No.
Yeah, Brett
Why?
Peterson. Hey, I'm gonna send this to Brett Peterson. I'm gonna wonder
Brett
if he
Peterson
recalls.
had to pay $100.
I remember him taking out his wallet and like handing over money. I want to say it was $100, but either way, those guys stood on business. Okay.
Okay. Well, let me tell you
It was
about
serious.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you about when I started to notice the culture of scouting change at the Pinewood Derby was when we got a new scoutmaster, and the years previous they handed out like literal trophies for the first
Winners.
As they should.
Yes, exactly. But this year with the new scoutmaster, I worked so hard to make that Pinewood Derby car perfect. I melted metal infused into the wood of the car to weight it properly to make sure that it would win. And I won. And
Congrats.
to my chagrin and horror, the Scoutmaster handed out cardboard medals to every single participant that had the specific reason why they were glad they were participating. Like, this car has the best wheels or the best body, and mine was just first place cardboard medal. I was so pissed.
Anyways, so the topic of today's episode, okay, we're talking about Boy Scouts, okay? You know, if you look into the history, there was a rise and fall, and we're going to watch this video. Essentially, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, met with the leader of Scouting of America, no longer called Boy Scouts of America. And he talks about this conversation that he had and basically the history and the downfall and some resolutions that they have made to improve the scouting program, okay? To make it so that, you know, young men feel not only like it's a place for them, but they feel excited to be a part of it, because truly every memory that I have of participating in the Boy Scouting program, it made me a better person, made me get out of my comfort zone, experience adventure. And let's be honest, okay? The young men program since,
It's gone downhill, man.
well, it's just like, where is it?
Well, yeah, it doesn't exist.
You know what
It's
I'm
actually
saying?
what happened.
Jackson, you were a leader in Young Men's recently.
Yes.
Until you moved.
For a month and a half. It was unfortunate.
Maybe not right now until after the video about it. Maybe we could hear about how it was different than when you were growing up.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, look, anyone that grew up in the time of scouting knows like high adventure, those type of things. And, you know, there was always something that you were working for, something that you were kept accountable, whether it was duty to God or getting merit badges. You as a young man felt responsibility and a call to become something more. And scouting was a huge motivator of that type of culture. And then when it went away, it's just like, what's filling its place?
And there were way more serious injuries back then, which was which, dude, I'm like joking, making a joke, but also it's like, bro, one of my buddies almost cut his finger off. Another kid fell off a roof. I have multiple broken arms. Our scoutmaster blew out his knee at the bottom, like when we were going through the subway in Zions.
Yeah,
he blew it out like halfway through and had to hike the whole rest of the way. We were like carrying him.
that's some.
I fell off a cliff.
It might you fell off a cliff. Like it might sound funny, but I don't know, man. It's good for boys to get hurt every once in a while. You know what I mean?
In a controlled environment.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, there were some negative aspects of the scouting program and unfortunate incidents that happened. But overall, I strongly believe, and if you disagree with this, give me your argument in the comments. But scouting was a net positive. It was a high net positive, at least in my life. And then earlier this year, I saw a little glimmer of hope, and we kind of touched on this. But if anyone knows the calling of the 14 newly called members of the Young Men General Advisory Board, pull up the link here, Brando. Zoom into that face of that beautiful man right there. Luke Nichols, okay? He probably looks way too showered and clean and nice than you probably recognize him. I recognize him rolling out of a sleeping bag like this.
Like snot plastered to his face.
And then munching some honey butter and bread. But click on his Instagram, okay? If you don't know this already, I feel so sad for you, but I'm also happy because now you're going to binge some of the best content.
This is what he
that's on the
normally
internet.
looks like.
Exactly. And so this is Luke Nichols. He had a show called Outdoor Boys on YouTube. He has since kind of discontinued making content, but it's up there. Go ahead. We're going to link it in the description. He's famous for going out in the Alaskan wilderness, surviving like 3 to 5 days with nothing but like some fire starter kit, a tarp, and like a sleeping bag. And it just is such a call to adventure. And so what I hope is in the works, okay, and I'm mentioning this again like I did in the last video because I kind of want to put this out into the ether if it's not already in the works. But we need, with, you know, the alleged $300 billion that the church owns in assets or liquid cash, let's put it in to a new Boy Scouting program, call it Outdoor Boys, and let's get the kids out chopping wood, going on hikes, living in the wilderness, and learning things in nature, because that's what I got from the scouting program, a call to adventure and a sense of responsibility to gain skills and become something more than I was, right? So I'm just saying that once again, Luke Nichols, I hope that something's in the works like that, because although Pete Hegseth, and we're going to watch this video here and stop at a couple points, he met with the head of the Scouting of America program, and it looks like it's trending in a good direction, but there's also some things that's like, bro, we're missing the mark heavily here.
How did we get here?
But I think it's worth just talking about why the church stepped away from scouting real quick.
Yep.
I mean, this is going to be top, you know, wave tops of it, but there were problems. One, they got away from Boy Scouts and it just became scouting, so that now girls were involved, which, like, that's why we had Girl Scouts, right? Like, we didn't have to, and guess what? Girl Scouts still exists. They still have Girl Scouts, but they don't have Boy Scouts anymore because it's bad if like boys have a place to go and do.
What I'll say, not to cut you off, he goes into the history of like where they went off trail and went super woke and all the problems that happened. So maybe we watch that and then we talk about other things.
But I'm talking specifically with the church, but then specifically one of the worries was allowing gay men to be Boy Scout leaders. Was one of the things that really pushed the church. I mean, they didn't come out and say that, but once that happened, then the church was like, all right, we're done with Boy Scouts. And you can say whatever you want. At the end of the day, I would not have men go with girls on camping trips by themselves, right? And it's not to say, it's not because every man is like a pedophile or anything like that. I don't think that's what the issue is. But it's like, if you're a gay man, that means you're attracted to men, and you're sending men out to be alone with boys in the woods forever. The same way I wouldn't send men out to be alone with girls in the woods for who knows how long. Yeah. And so I think that was kind of like the point where it got cut off.
Okay. No, I appreciate that context. So we're going to watch this video here. We're going to stop at a couple points, but essentially Pete, he's going to relay the conversation that he had and the resolutions that they've made to hopefully make scouting great again.
For more than a century, Boy Scouts of America prepared over 130 million American boys to make moral and ethical choices, not just during their formative years, but for a lifetime as they grew into men. The first few words of the Scout Oath exemplify this. Quote, "On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country." The Boy Scouts are embedded in our communities. They're sponsored by community organizations, service clubs, and churches. Many Boy Scouts have gone on to senior leadership positions in their communities, in business, in our nation's military, and as elected representatives in local, state, and national office. 6 Boy Scouts have been elected President of the United States. 11 of the 12 men to walk on the moon, Boy Scouts. Boy Scout training focused on responsible citizenship, character and leadership development, patriotism, personal fitness, self-reliance, faith, and a wide range of outdoor skills. It was a great program, and this department had a close relationship with the Scouts almost since its inception, as many troops meet on military bases. After 2012, however, the Boy Scouts lost their way, and a once great organization became gravely wounded. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, crept in. The name was changed to Scouting America. Girls were accepted. The focus on God as the ruler of the universe was watered down to include openness to humanism and earth-centered pagan religions. Scouting became an organization that no longer supported and celebrated boys. They even welcomed the destructive myth of gender fluidity and transgenderism to infiltrate their membership. Along the way, standards were lowered and merit destroyed in favor of an insidious, radical, woke ideology that is anti-America and anti-American. The result, membership cratered. Americans didn't want this. In 1970, 10 million boys participated in Boy Scouts. Currently, less than 1 million boys and girls participate.
Pause there.
Further,
dude, back in 1970, there was 10 million boys in Boy Scouts.
Wow.
That's crazy, man.
That's incredible. And now, looking at the state of it today, it's so discouraging, and it just shows you, like, how destructive this type of ideology is. And it's cloaked in this form of godliness, but denies the power thereof. Cloaked in this form of, oh yes, everyone can participate. Our arms are open up for everyone, as if there can't be an organization specifically to help young men, young boys develop into young men. Right? And so it's just so sad to see the downfall of such a great organization that once had 10 million boys going out in the wilderness, working on themselves. And I forgot how much there were some patriotic geared merit badges. And Brando, as someone who has done allegedly what you said, every single merit badge, do you recall, any of those?
Did you mean you did all the merit badges necessary to become an Eagle Scout, not every single merit badge that exists?
Oh, did I say all merit badges?
You said all merit badges.
Oh, I think I did everyone. I did some extra ones.
You had to.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I looked it up. The church ended their relationship or announced that they were going to end their relationship with scouting in 2017. That was before I turned 18, so I didn't even have the opportunity to do my Eagle Scout project.
Dude, your Eagle Scout project, I had it done when I was 12, bro.
Dude, Hayden had a go-to scout leader.
I did have a really good scout.
I had a
can't
great
even
one,
take
too.
credit for it. I'm standing on the wings of bigger eagles than me.
Exactly. But no, even going from the oath, what is it? On my honor, I will do my duty to God and my country. And there was such a patriotic aspect to it that really instilled a love for God and a love for this great nation.
Yeah, I remember doing patriotic merit badges. I can't remember everything specifically, but I just remember like scout camps too, like those week-long ones. And we would, recite the Pledge of Allegiance and I loved that little American flag patch on my right shoulder.
Yeah, dude, and one of the things I remember so vividly at Weeblo's camp up Mill Creek Canyon here in Utah, when I was there, we did a flag retiring ceremony, and these, I remember it so vividly. You had some service members that went to Vietnam, and this flag was allegedly flown during World War II and during a few other wars. And I just remember like this sense of, holy cow, like this is incredible. And the respectful manner in which they treated the retiring of this flag was very marking to me as a young man. But
yeah. Also, he talked about this wilderness survival stuff, like being in the wilderness. And I just remember my wilderness survival merit badge. Like, it was so fun, dude. Yeah. It was like they literally gave you a tarp and some rope. And they're like, all right, we'll come pick you up in the morning. And there's just like 5 of us out there.
Build a shelter.
And we have to build our own shelters.
Wood.
And so we just built shelters out of wood and branches and just slept out overnight. And it was
so sick.
So awesome for a 12-year-old boy to have to do. You know what I mean? Because it is a little scary. Like, even though they're not super far away, the noises you hear at night in the woods, like, it's freaky, and it just causes you to do things that make you into a man.
Yeah, get you out of your comfort zone. So he kind of went through the kind of downfall of, they changed their name from Boy Scouts to America to Scouting America, allowed girls to come in, were then afflicted by diversity, equity, inclusion ideas, gender fluidity, allowing, like Hayden said,
openly gay scout leaders.
Openly gay scout leaders and stuff. And he already explained how that's problematic.
Well, and it probably goes without saying, but it's occurring to me that it seems like the decline in patriotism in our country maybe correlates a little bit with that timing. And we have a lot of young adults now who did not experience scouting who maybe have lost that sense of patriotism.
Well, yeah, it was such a foundational thing that you did starting when you were 12 years old and in your formative years, learning that God was heavily involved in the founding of this great nation. And now that kids are no longer getting that from scouting, they're definitely not getting it from our school system, because a lot of these guys, a lot of kids nowadays are growing up, going through middle school, high school, and especially in college, and coming out pretty thinking that America is 100% the bad guy. We're evil. Our past is nothing but racism and genocide and all this other stuff, instead of, seeing the foundation of this great nation as what it truly is, a straight miracle that the Constitution has survived as long as it has. So he explains all the problems. Now he's going to go into the conversation that he had and some of the resolutions, which, it's a step in the right direction, but there's a lot of work to do.
Many of these community organizations that once supported Scout troops, they withdrew their support. And Scouting America, the parent organization, filed for bankruptcy protection. The changes Scouting America made since 2012 have also jeopardized the relationship with this department. And I was very seriously considering ending our support of Scouting altogether. We have a department to protect, after all. Beyond that, the policies Scouting America have in place violate President Trump's Executive Order 14173, entitled Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity. But before making this big change, I decided to meet with the current Scouting leadership to convey our deep concerns. Based on that face-to-face conversation and subsequent conversations, Scouting America agreed to make several key reforms. And let me briefly highlight a few of them. First, Scouting America has agreed to comply immediately with the provisions of Executive Order 14173. This includes reviewing and replacing politicized, divisive, and discriminatory language throughout the organization, programs, and all publications. No more DEI 0. Second, the, quote, Citizen in Society Merit Badge that encourage Scouts to explore diversity, equity, inclusion, and identity. They always mask it under a name that sounds great, but it's doing something else. And then asks those Scouts to engage in activism on those topics. That badge has been discontinued. Third, Scouting America will modify its policy to make clear that membership will be based solely on biological sex at birth and not gender identity. That means that the application, any application, will have only 2 sex designations, male and female, and the application must match the applicant's birth certificate. Scouting will also make clear that biological boys and girls will not be allowed to occupy or share intimate spaces together, toilets, showers, tents, anywhere like that. Fourth, Scouting America will honor those who serve by waiving the registration fees for children of active duty, guard, and reserve families. Should have happened a long time ago. Fifth, in partnership with the War Department, Scouting America will introduce a new military service merit badge. These and other changes that Scouting America's leadership committed to, in that room right over there, will hopefully result in a rededication to the foundational ideals that have defined Scouting for generations: duty to God and country, leadership, character, and service. However, as President Reagan famously said, trust but verify. This agreement is new, and the department's support for Scouting America is contingent on them making substantial progress toward reaching these and many other positive changes in the next 6 months. At that time, we'll vigorously review progress and decide whether or not to continue our support. The onus is squarely on Scouting America to deliver. If we're unsatisfied with Scouting America's progress toward and commitment to the agreed upon reforms, we will find them in violation of the President's executive order and cease our support. We hope that doesn't happen, but it could. Ideally, I believe the Boy Scouts should go back to being the Boy Scouts, as originally founded, a group that develops boys into men. Maybe someday. There are also additional youth and boys organizations, groups like Trail Life USA and Awana clubs, that are already compliant with President Trump's executive order that the department may eventually support as well. But we're watching, and we're watching closely. We look forward to providing you with updates after our 6-month review, and wish the best to Scouting America.
Okay.
Who's the weirdo out there that just won't let it be Boy Scouts? Like, I'm looking, you can go to girlscoutsofamerica.com. It's a Girl Scout. It exists. So who's the weirdo over there that's just like, no, it can't be Boy Scouts? Like, it makes me want to go over there and smack someone.
Whoa, dude. Resort to physical violence?
Yeah.
That's why you're not ever going to be in a position of political leadership.
That's fine. I don't want to be.
So yeah, it aggravating, right? But let's go over some of the positive changes. They're saying that there's no more DEI language in any of their publications, getting rid of that weird merit badge, the citizens in society, having them basically become political activists as little kids.
Did you see that
Protest
picture?
ICE.
Yeah. Did you see that picture of the Scouts marching with pride flags like a year ago or something?
No, I didn't see that picture.
Yeah, no, that was real. Yeah.
Well, they're getting their merit badge, okay? Not anymore. And then it says membership is going to be based on their biological sex at birth, right? So getting rid of transgenderism, but also they're still having boys and girls in the organization. One other thing that includes is that boys and girls won't occupy the same intimate spaces of like tents for activities and stuff like that, and bathrooms. So that's a step in the right direction. Waiving fees for vets. All right, I guess that's sick. And he emphasizes, he's like, that should happen a long time ago.
Waiving fees for vets. What does that mean?
Like for like if you want Walker to join the Boy Scouts, you don't have to pay the initial fees.
Yeah.
So congratulations. Thank you for your service.
Yeah.
And then they're doing a military service badge. So that's cool. There's still a lot that needs to be done. It's a step in the right direction, I guess. But ultimately, my faith is in Luke Nichols. Okay. And not to put too much pressure, and I don't even know the realm of his calling or his specific assignments, but please, guys, I feel like we have the resources to do it.
Even outside of the church, Luke Nichols, he has his calling.
Yeah.
Do your calling, man. Just start your own program. You have millions of young men who watch you online. If you started a program where there was merit badges, you could raise the money. Easily you could raise the money. If you went online, if you went on YouTube and you said, hey, I'm starting a new Boy Scouts of America, and we're not going to deal with all this other stuff. It's going to be turning young boys into men. I need money. You would have people hucking money at you to be able to get it made.
Yeah.
And so, like, even if the church is just like, they're not interested in doing it, Luke Nichols, you're our only hope. You know what I mean?
You're our only hope.
I have a call with Jonah I have to go to. But what I will say before I go is just like, scouting is amazing. Young men's leaders who are out there, you might not feel super inclined to the outdoors. Figure it out, because it's important for young men to go outside and to be in uncomfortable situations and to learn things and to be out in nature with God. So even though you might not be interested in camping, figure it out. Watch some YouTube videos, read a book, because we're here to develop young men, and men and young men have always been a part of the wilderness out in God's creation. And so even if the church decides that they're not going to put resources into building some sort of new young men's program, it's your prerogative, fathers and leaders of young men, to figure it out.
Yeah.
Amen. Now he's rage quitting.
Yeah. But
Peace out.
good luck on that call with Jonah. We're about to highlight something that he drops in one of his books here in a second, Lost Gems of Genesis.
And
but
his new book is coming out.
His new book's coming out. It's going to be so dank. Oh my gosh. It's going to be amazing. So, yes, essentially, and I say that kind of jokingly, but also, honestly, we need something. And I think Hayden said it beautifully there, that we need to take that responsibility upon our shoulders to, get the needle moving in that direction, to recreate some sort of thing that allows young men to have responsibility, to have motivation, to gain more skills, be outdoors, gain the attributes of men, and become better people,
Because if we don't, then there's going to be a generation of young men who become young men leaders themselves who don't know how to do any of these things, who don't know how to go camping, who don't know how to hike and survive in the wilderness, and then they won't be able to share that with the younger generation either. So that's kind of just a really scary thought.
Yeah. And so, like you said before, I was a young men's leader for about a month and a half, and then my wife and I kind of unexpectedly moved. So haven't gotten a calling in our new ward yet, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed and praying. So anyways, let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments. And if anyone has a personal connection to Luke Nichols, would love to just chat with him on the phone, you know? One, selfishly, just because I'm a massive fan. And two, he's just a great guy. He's a great guy. But moving on to getting scripturally based, okay? We got some crazy stuff to share with you. Like I alluded in the intro, we're going to be taking a look at if Abraham truly did sacrifice Isaac, or, you know, the story is as it reads in the Old Testament in Genesis 22, that an angel stopped him. Okay? Now, if you're not familiar with Jonah Barnes, he's an absolute dog and one of our authors. We've published 2 of his books thus far, The Key to the Keystone, which the subtitle for that is How Apocryphal Texts Unlock the Book of Mormon's Brass Plates. Phenomenal read. The book that we're going to be taking a look at today is called The Lost Gems of Genesis, How Apocryphal Texts Prove Joseph Smith Fixed the Bible. Now, there's one chapter in here, it's chapter 9, that he has something called a TLDR, too long didn't read, little summation at the beginning of the chapter of what the whole chapter is going to be diving into. And I'm going to read it for you, and you're probably going to be like, okay, that's insane and not true at all. But then we're going to go through a little bit on this argument here. But chapter 9 of The Lost Gems of Genesis, it says, as God's new friend, Abraham learns that Jehovah has power over life and death, and he had to learn it the hardest way by killing and burning Isaac. Though the Sadducees tried to cover it up, Abraham totally killed Isaac, like fully killed. Burn the body 100%. Getting the sacrifice of Isaac right helps us understand the sacrifice of the Lamb of God and explains a lot of cryptic passages in the New Testament.
Oh my gosh. Graphic.
Pretty bold claim, though.
When he says the Sadducees, are we talking about the Sadducees potentially manipulated the Torah?
Yeah, so essentially, just like is outlined in the Book of Mormon in like 1 Nephi chapter 13, talking about how the plain and precious things will be taken out of the book. Basically, the people that had the final say of what went into the Bible, the Old Testament specifically, were the same people that murdered Jesus Christ. And so obviously something that was done in similitude of the sacrifice of the only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, is not going to probably come out in its raw, authentic form. And there might be some things omitted from it, possibly. Now, we did a video on the Stick of Joseph YouTube channel. It was about an hour and 1 minute. And Jonah goes through this full argument and stuff. But if you can recall the story in Genesis 22, basically what we have is God commands Abraham to take Isaac up to Mount Moriah, and that they go up the mountain, and it talks about how he basically sets up Isaac to be sacrificed. And then right before he's about to follow through with the commandments of the Lord, then an angel stops him, a ram appears in the thicket, and Isaac is spared, essentially. And there's some iconography and paintings that you've probably seen that demonstrate this as well. Just like this painting, right? This angel is stopping the sword right as he's about to sacrifice Isaac. And then the next one here, kind of the same motif, right? And so for all my life, that's kind of how I've understood it. And then when Jonah brings up this in his book, I remember when I was reading the manuscript before we even published it, I was like, I don't know if we're going to be able to publish this. This is an insane idea. But then in this video and in the book, of course, he presents this argument. And there's a lot of scriptures that are very curious and make a lot more sense when basically the story is that Abraham truly did sacrifice Isaac in similitude of Jesus, and that God raised him from the dead. Okay. Now, we're going to go through a couple of these different verses. The first one I'm going to read here, and then we're going to watch a snippet of the interview that we did with Jonah explaining this idea. But if we want to pull up here on scripture notes, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 17. Right here, Paul is basically talking about all these things that were done by faith throughout the years in the scriptures. And in 17, he says, by faith, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, accounting that God was able to raise him up, even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure.
Okay, this is interesting because the New Testament, of course, it went through its own, losing some of its plain and precious things as well, but it was not affected by the Sadducees or the other people who were
against resurrection.
Right. So this means that Paul maybe read something different than what we have available to us right now, because he's literally saying explicitly he was offered up in similitude like the only begotten son and then was raised from the dead. It says that right there.
Yeah, it says Abraham, by faith, right, he received the promise from God. He goes through, gets the commandment to sacrifice Isaac, and then it says accounting that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence he also received him in a figure.
I mean, is there any other way to look at that? Like,
people would say, yes, he was okay about, gonna do it because he knew that God could have, oh shoot.
What just happened? What just happened?
Okay, we're gonna have to insert something at the beginning. Okay, so in the Marine Corps, there's patches, all right? There's patches that have your blood type on them, and like mine is like O positive, I think. And so then a Marine stuck a patch on my kit that says HIV positive.
Oh no.
And then I guess someone patted me on the chest and I didn't even realize it. I think Hayden did, and that had been on my chest the entire time.
No shot. Oh my gosh. That is not funny.
Oh gosh. Anyways,
Yeah.
we'll figure out how we're gonna put that in.
If you're watching this, you've probably seen a disclaimer edited in.
Yes. Okay. We'll figure that out.
Oh my god.
That is hilarious. But anyways, so that makes a lot more sense when we understand that, oh my gosh, Abraham really did truly sacrifice Isaac. And just like it says in Ether in the Book of Mormon, that we receive no witness until after the trial of our faith. And accounting that he knew that God had power over death, he was comfortable going through with this sacrifice in similitude of the only begotten son. Now, there's a lot of rabbinical and early Jewish texts that also say that Isaac was truly sacrificed and that he was dead for 3 days and then God raised him up. Some say he was dead for 3 months, others 3 years. There's a lot of different, nuances to the rabbinical tradition. But just to say that there's a lot of people from early writings that believe that, yes, Isaac was truly sacrificed. Now, Jonah, in this next clip here, he explains some verses in James that lean towards that as well.
Works does not lead to completion.
Right.
Completion comes from works, which is your justification of faith.
Yeah.
And sanctification is what leads to completeness.
Now let's imagine that this is true, which it totally is, by the way. Let's imagine that my theory is correct and it's 1,000,000,000% correct. Okay. Now, if you have that in your head, now listen to what James says.
Right.
He says, "Wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he had offered Isaac his son upon the altar? Seest thou how faith wrought with his works, and by his works was faith made perfect?" When you have that in your head and you read that, you go, oh, this is an excellent sermon by James. James is saying, you guys all know how it wasn't enough that he marched up the mountain. It wasn't enough that he raised the blade. It wasn't enough that he put him on the wood. He had to do it. And that's what made his faith complete.
Right. Well, so I read from the NRSVUE, and it says, you see that faith was active along with his works, and by works, faith was brought to completion.
Yeah.
So it's just using that Greek
I love it.
through the lexicon to bring forth that out of what James is appealing to.
Yeah,
And that is,
right.
so then,
So there's another verse right there in James that heavily leans and makes more sense in this, with this understanding that Abraham truly did it.
So the idea that faith unto works is actually completing the faithful act.
Yeah, it's going along that same vein that you receive no witness until after the trial of your faith, till you receive a command, right? And by faith you go through and you complete that commandment from God, and therefore then the witness is received. And just as Abraham received the promise, like it said in Hebrews, that God had power over death and would raise Isaac up.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question, and maybe you're going to get to this. How does this strengthen that story that God explicitly put in the Bible for us to learn something from?
Oh, I mean, it totally makes it, because there's a whole entire religious sect, the Jews, that read the Torah, the Old Testament, and will read these same verses that we say, oh, this is a metaphor for Jesus Christ. This is a type of Jesus Christ. This is pointing towards Jesus of Nazareth. And we have an entire religious sect that reads those same verses and like, no, that's not talking about Jesus of Nazareth. That's like loosely connected, maybe. And so then when it turns from just Abraham going up with Isaac and then being willing to, but then not actually doing it. But when you add the second piece of by faith, because he received that promise from God that he had power over death, went through with it. And then depending on these different rabbinical traditions, let's say the one that says that he was dead for 3 days and then God raised him from the dead. That's like, bro, that's so in similitude of the only begotten Son. Mm-hmm. And this is further vindicated in the Book of Mormon when we read in Jacob chapter 4, if you want to pull up scripture now, sir, Brandon. In Jacob chapter 4, he says, behold, they believed in Christ and worshiped the Father in his name, and also we worship the Father in his name. And for this intent we keep the law of Moses, it pointing our souls to him. And for this cause it is sanctified unto us for righteousness, even as it was accounted unto Abraham in the wilderness to be obedient unto the commands of God in offering up his son Isaac, which was a similitude of God and his only begotten Son.
To me, it's not a similitude if he doesn't sacrifice Isaac.
Exactly. Point to me one other time in the scriptures in which God gives a hard commandment, and then right before you're about to do it, he's like, no, you're good. You don't actually have to go through with it. Yeah. It's like, no, it's like, hey, I'm going to flood the entire earth. You got to build a boat. And then right when you gather all the, wood and everything and you're about to do it, he's like, okay, no, I'm not going to do it. It's like God, whenever he commands something, like when does he ever just give us the out to not have to do it?
Yeah. Know? Yeah. So what do you say to people who find this idea kind of unsettling that God would command Abraham to do such a thing and then go through with it?
I'll say, yeah, maybe it is a little bit. If I received a command from God to offer up my only son, right? That would be tough. And then I actually have to go through with it. But beforehand, just like it says in Hebrews, that he had received the promises. Then when he had that faith and that God assured him that he had power over death, then he went through with it, and God then manifested his power by raising his son from the dead. It's just like Jesus Christ. What would you say to people that find it unsettling that God would put his only begotten son through such agony to not only be killed, but to be whipped, to be tortured, to have to suffer the pains and afflictions and sins of all mankind, and then be brutally killed on the cross? Here's what I would say. The cross didn't win. The sacrifice didn't hold. God raised him up from the dead. The tomb is empty. And so what I'd say is like, yeah, that's crazy hard. And I don't know how I would react if I got the same thing. If I also got a promise from God saying, look, I have power over death, then obviously that'd give me further reassurance. But yeah, it's just one more thing. It's like God, like he asks us to do hard things, but he always follows through, and death did not win either with Isaac or Jesus.
I just think it's a really powerful archetype. Isaac's a really powerful archetype for Christ, who would come, and Abraham going through with the sacrifice sends a really powerful message to people. I wish that it hadn't been corrupted, and of course this is not confirmed, but the evidence is piling up. And if it was corrupted and Abraham really did sacrifice Isaac, God's intention with that was to send a really powerful message about his son who would be coming, and the people would have needed that powerful story of Isaac actually dying and then being raised from the dead to have greater faith in Jesus Christ. Why did the Nephites have such great faith in Jesus Christ? Perhaps because in the brass plates they had this version of the story, which gave them that hope for Christ coming in and doing that same exact thing. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And so if you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and you ascribe to what it says in the Book of Mormon in 1 Nephi 13, how the plain and precious truths would be taken away from the Book of the Lamb of God that comes forth out of the mouth of the Jews, then it's wholly possible and, in my opinion, probable that if something like this actually happened and those that had the final say on what went into the Old Testament were the same people that killed the Savior of the world, that likely they could have seen it prudent to omit that Abraham truly did sacrifice Isaac. Now, this isn't something that's unique to Jonah or something like that. Like, if you look up this argument, many different biblical scholars talk about this. And like I said, this is found in a myriad of different rabbinical traditions and early Jewish texts. And so, but it strengthens the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints position of Joseph Smith's divine calling. Exactly, especially from what we read in the Book of Mormon. And so, like I said, we're going to leave the link in the description for the full hour-long episode that we did with Jonah, because there's a bunch more verses that he uses in his argument, but also pick up his book, The Lost Gems of Genesis, How Apocryphal Texts Prove Joseph Smith Fixed the Bible. There's that argument and many others that really blew my mind and made me appreciate the Pearl of Great Price so much more, and many of the incredible revelations that Joseph Smith received. But anyways, Brando, today was an awesome episode. I think so. I learned a lot. Yes. I'm pumped for Scouts maybe coming back to the church. Maybe. Dude, we're manifesting this so hard. And please tag Luke Nichols, send it to him if you're personal friends with him. I would just love to hear his thoughts. I'd love to hear his thoughts. And also apologize for this patch. I gotta go freaking... There's no way Hayden put that on my chest and just let me do the show with it, right? I have no idea how that got on me. But anyways, Marines have sick humor. Anyways, God bless you. And until Monday, remember, if you're not looking at the world through a restored gospel lens, if you're not looking at Boy Scouts through a restored gospel lens, if you're not looking at the story of Abraham and Isaac through a restored gospel lens, you're only getting half the story. God bless you.